I didn't purchase the vehicle to go off-roading. I just wanted a truck. That's all I wanted. Probably one that you're not thinking of, and there's very little culture with this platform. But I take to turn the seatbelt in and I put it into the little receiver, and I'm constantly have to jam it in there over and over. You know, the more fancy it is on the inside, the more fancy things are, the less likely people get into this mindset, well, I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want to ruin it, or I don't want to scratch the paint. The ZR2 came with at least all-terrain tires, while the Tacoma came with like street tires. And they only did that so that they could improve their gas mileage on their spec sheet. There's like none of that with the Colorado ZR2, it seems, and there's a lot more of it with Toyota and Jeep. 3000, you know, keep hearing freaking ricochets from these guys. Camera's all the way over there. Okay, got a little notes here, some notes, 2 pages worth, guys. Okay, I bought this truck back in 2019. It's 2025 now. It's been 6 years. We're at 100,000 miles. A lot of those miles have been rough, off-road, difficult rock crawling miles, a lot of highway miles, and a lot of just day-to-day, you know, commute to your job miles. So we're gonna go into the positives first, and then we'll get into the negatives. Some of the negatives are probably things that you'd expect, but I guarantee some of them are probably things that you're not thinking about. So stick around for that, and then we'll do just kind of a conclusion and what I think of the platform overall. All right, so first one for the positives. We got it's off-road capable from the factory. So this truck, you know, when you buy it from the factory, 2019 Colorado ZR2, it comes with a 2-inch factory lift. It's got the DSSV shocks, which aren't the best shocks on the market, but they're top tier. They're good shocks. Okay, so you're getting a lot for your money there. It's got front and rear lockers. Okay, so that's a huge one. A lot of vehicles don't have front lockers. I know the Jeep Rubicon does, and then the Colorado ZR2 does. So like Tacoma, TRD Pro, they don't come with front lockers. And the reason that that's important is, at least the way I see it, I've been rock crawling for, you know, 5-6 years now. And a lot of people like to see, oh, well, can I get up this obstacle without lockers? Well, the problem with that is sometimes, yeah, you can get up without lockers, but it ends up just being a lot more kind of rough. And then you're just setting yourself up for breaking things. So now that I've broken enough stuff on this truck, I prefer to just get up over the obstacle as smooth as possible. So if I think I'm gonna need a locker, I just put both my lockers on and I go up super smooth. I've done a lot of off-roading with Jake, who has a Tacoma TRD off-road. He has a rear locker, 35-inch tires, and he's been able to do all the same obstacles I can. But it usually, on the more difficult ones, he usually gets up a lot more kind of rough than I do. I go up a lot more smooth, and it's all due to that front locker. So definitely something to think about. It's just going to help you not damage stuff as much, and then there might be a few special obstacles where it really kind of comes into play. And it also comes with pretty good Under Armour protection from the factory. So it doesn't come fully protected, but it's got all the stuff up in the front, all the skid plates up in the front are there. You don't have anything for the rear diff, and there's nothing for like the rear drive shaft and everything, but and there's nothing for the fuel tank either. But you're getting almost everything else, and I've never needed to put any other skid plates on there in the 6 years I've been driving this truck. So it's even more off-road capable with modifications. So you can do some basic modifications. You know, you can put bigger tires on there. You can do, you know, another leaf spring. You can do, you know, a leveling kit up in the front. You can put better shocks. You can raise it up a little bit. So you can do some basic modifications pretty easily to the truck. That's not going to really hurt its utility, but it'll help you, you know, perform better off-road. So that's another positive. The truck is very utility capable. I mean, it's a truck, right? So you get all of the utility that comes with having a truck in your personal life, back at home. You know, most of us aren't out off-roading every single day. We're at home commuting to work and just doing chores and things like that. And that's where this truck really comes into play, is you can still go out into the mountains and have fun and do some pretty difficult trails and get that rock crawling itch out of the way. But then when you're at home, you have a vehicle that's actually going to perform for you and provide a lot of utility. Versus a Jeep, you know, a Jeep's better at rock crawling and it's easier to modify for rock crawling, but it doesn't have much utility back home at all. So that's definitely a positive for this platform. So another positive is it has a better strength, a higher strength bed coming from the factory. So the only other real competitor is going to be the Tacoma, and the Tacomas are known for having kind of these weak beds with a plastic liner, and bed stiffeners are very, very common for people, you know, modifying their Tacomas. I haven't had to put a bed stiffener in this thing once. I haven't even noticed any issues with it. It comes with a nice liner on the inside. No bed stiffeners. I have the whole 10. I have a lot of weight in there. I put a lot of stuff in that bed, and it's shown no sign of issues at all. So that's another plus. You're just going to get a better utility bed than you would if you were going with a Tacoma. It's more affordable. So I actually went back to 2019 when I bought the truck, and I looked up all the prices for its main competitors back then, which were the Tacoma and then the Jeep. The ZR2 comes in at $43,000, you know. Keep hearing freaking ricochets from these guys too. The Tacoma TRD Pro was $45,000, and then the Jeep Rubicon was $54,000 for a comparable like trim package. So you're just getting more for your money when you went with the ZR2. Interior cab space. So the Colorado ZR2 has way more interior cab space than the Jeep does or the Tacoma. I've been in all three vehicles. My buddy has a Tacoma, my girlfriend has a Jeep, and they're just tight in there. I mean, it feels like the floorboard is up to here. So that's a big plus. And the day-to-day, you know, every single day you're going to be in this thing driving it, and you're going to notice that lack of space. So having that interior cab space is very nice. It's going to allow you to be more comfortable. It's going to allow you to fit more stuff on the inside. So everyone knows once you start going out and camping, space becomes an issue and you just need to fit. You're trying to cram more and more things in there. So that's going to help out with that. Overall reliability has been pretty good. I haven't noticed, there hasn't been any major issues with the truck that would be different from any other kind of vehicle, okay, that you buy. The biggest stuff that I've had to repair has always been because I've been off-roading and wheeling it in damaging parts that way, like breaking my drive shaft on rocks and just kind of like the wear and tear that comes with rock crawling. So I haven't noticed anything just major that's glaring like, hey, that shouldn't be happening, okay? You know, I had to replace the shocks. The DSSV shocks went out about 50,000 miles, the rears did. The front ones went out about 80,000 miles, so now they're replaced with Kings. And I'm going to do a modifications update as well for this year. I usually do one a year. So we'll talk about kind of the new stuff, including the shocks in that video. But other than that, the reliability has been really good. So another part is Chevy dealerships. Chevy dealerships, they're very easy to work with. The customer service is fantastic. I've lived in 3 different states. I used to be in the Army, so I was Fort Leonard Wood. I was at Fort Hood in Texas, and then Fort Carson in Colorado, and I live in Colorado now. So all the Chevy dealerships I've ever been to in all 3 of those locations, they've just always been great. It's always been nice. They make things super easy. They care about their jobs. They care about their performance. So that's a pleasant experience. And that might not seem like, oh, okay, well, a dealership, who cares? But before all that, when I was in college, I used to drive Volkswagens mainly, and so did most of my family. And whenever I went to a Volkswagen dealership, it just seemed bad. The customer service was bad. They didn't seem to really care about their job or their performance. It was just bad. And so when I switched over to Ford and Chevy later on in my life, I just noticed that the dealerships were just way, way better than the Volkswagen ones. So, I mean, it's something to consider. All right, so last positive we'll talk about is the IFS. That can also be viewed as a negative, so we'll talk about that in the negatives as well. But as far as positives go, IFS is going to be way better for your day-to-day life. So driving on the interstate, going at 75 miles per hour on I-70, hitting all the turns, hitting those little bumps, you know, right before the bridge. They're like where the bridge and the main road connect, and then it's on a turn too, and you'll hit that, and the next thing you know, if you're on a straight axle, you feel like you just lost control and you're bouncing around all over the place. But on an IFS, you're going to have way better handling, way better stability, way more comfortable ride. The problem, well, we'll talk about it. There's a problem with IFS, and we'll get to that into the negatives. But for your day-to-day life, back home, driving anywhere long distance, IFS is going to be way more comfortable, way better handling, and just general ride is going to be way better. All right, so negatives, IFS. IFS is great for utility, great for back home, but it's not ideal for rock crawling, okay? That's why all Jeep Rubicons are straight axle, because one, they're easier to modify. A straight axle is easier to modify than an IFS. It's cheaper to modify than an IFS, and it gives you more flex, and it's less easy to damage. So basically, if you're trying to off-road seriously and you want to go do all the crazy stuff in Moab, then you're gonna want to go with a straight axle. You're probably gonna just want to buy a Jeep Rubicon. It's already got the straight axle on. It's gonna be easier to modify, easier to fit your 40s on there, lift it up. But if you don't think you're gonna do, you can still do most of the trails in Moab too with, this truck. I've done a lot of them. You're just not gonna be able to do the crazy ones like Moab Rim and Pritchett Canyon and all that stuff. So just keep that in mind. If that's your goal, I would just buy a Jeep. But if your goal is to do a lot of off-roading, but have a utility truck back home and, go to all these crazy little campsites and awesome places, then maybe a truck's the best way to go in IFS. But it just depends on kind of what your goals are and what you plan on doing. And that's also a trap too, because a lot of times what you originally bought the vehicle for is not what you end up wanting to do later, later on. I mean, I didn't buy this vehicle to go do all this stuff. I started doing this stuff because I had the vehicle that allowed me to do it, and then I started getting into off-roading a lot, and so I didn't purchase the vehicle to go off-roading. I just wanted a truck. That's all I wanted. And then it kind of turned into this whole thing where now I go off-roading and I'm filming all my adventures and I'm camping and going to all these crazy places. So I was able to do that because I bought the truck, and the truck basically kind of took me on that path, but that wasn't the plan. So I assume that that'll probably happen a lot. You might be like, oh, I want to buy a Jeep and I want to go do all the crazy trails in Moab, and then maybe you do go do all the crazy trails in Moab, and now you're sick of it and you just want something more reliable and more useful when you're at home. So who knows where it all goes, but that's kind of part of the fun. So see where the adventure takes you. Okay, so the next one is the platform as a whole gets a lot less aftermarket support than Tacoma and Jeep. So that becomes a problem just because it's harder to find parts for modifications. There's less people like me. There's less people on YouTube, less people on Instagram who are out there doing all these crazy modifications and kind of paving the way for other people to follow in their path to modify their vehicle that way. I mean, there's just very few people doing that with these trucks, and there's just not that much aftermarket support, so it really kind of limits your options. I mean, one of the only guys I know who's even put 40s on this thing is this guy, Ready Rig, and he doesn't even have that big of a presence on social media or Instagram. I wish he did. I just don't think that's what he's into. I mean, I've looked at some of his stuff, and I think he's like a very mechanic type. He does all this, even to put the 40s on there, and he did an LS swap or something. I mean, the kind of know-how you would need to do that on this kind of vehicle is more than what most people probably have. So, that's kind of a problem. And another issue too is like trying to find gears for this truck is almost impossible now. They don't even, Nitto was the only one, or Nitro was the only one who made gears for this. They made 410s and 4.56s, and they went out of business, so they were bought out. So now you can't even get gears. So if you want to put 35s, 37s on here, you have to stick with stock gears, and it's not going to work out very well in the long run. So when you get new tires, you really need to re-gear, and so that means, are there gears available for your vehicle? And this truck, I mean, I think you can buy 410s. I don't know what company makes them, but maybe, leave a comment in the below if you know anyone making gears for this generation Colorado. But I mean, it's a problem, and I got the 4.56s right now, but I just kind of got lucky. And by the way, I ordered those things. It took a year and a half for them to show up. So that's a problem. That's a real problem when you're trying to modify the vehicle. So keep that in mind. That's a huge negative. One of the only real brands that makes Pink suspension. They do a lot of modification parts and stuff for this vehicle, and they got good customer service. They have a good website, so they're a legit company to go to find stuff for the vehicle. If you're looking, I'd recommend them. I bought a lot of my stuff from them, actually. All right, so this is probably one that you're not thinking of, and there's very little culture with this platform. And I guess what I mean by that is, so I was driving my girlfriend's Jeep, and it's just a stock Jeep Rubicon 2-door, like nothing special about it. It's cool, but it's not modified at all. And I'm just driving it around, and every time I see a Jeep come by, they're waving at me or, noticing, and it's kind of like a culture to it, Jeep culture. It's kind of like Harleys, the same thing with the Harley Davidsons, and I have a Harley, and, every time you're riding around, you see another guy in a Harley, you wave, you notice each other. But whenever I'm driving this truck, I'll see another ZR2 out there, and I'm like, I notice it. I'm like, hey, want to acknowledge them, and they're not even looking or paying attention, because to them it's just some truck, it's just some vehicle. Like, they don't care about some other guy's ZR2, they don't care about some guy who's modified it or whatever. I mean, I get more looks from people just in regular cars checking out my truck, you know. And so I'm not looking for recognition. That's not what I'm getting at. It's like, I want to acknowledge somebody else and be like, hey, there's a culture, like you're part of a group, a club or whatever. I mean, that's kind of fun. It's cool. People like that. I mean, humans like that. So there's like none of that with the Colorado ZR2, it seems. And there's a lot more of it with Toyota and Jeep. And maybe that'll come, you know, maybe it'll change. But for now, it's just, the culture is not really there at all. And I definitely say that's a negative. Seatbelt. Okay, so the seatbelt, this is a small one. You might not think about it, but I take to turn the seatbelt in and I put it into the little receiver, and I'm constantly have to jam it in there over and over and over again because it won't actually hit the receiver. And this has become an issue. It's in a lot of other Colorados, just people who drive in them that I know. They're like, yeah, to do the seatbelt thing's driving me crazy. And, you know, is that happening in your vehicle? And I'm like, yep, it happens in mine too. So I could probably get it fixed somehow, but it's just a small thing that seems to be consistent across a lot of other Colorados, and every time you're getting in, I mean, that's a few times a day, so it gets pretty annoying. Next thing is, it has a very basic interior, and this is kind of common for mid-sized trucks back in 2019, is, like I said earlier, they just don't, you know, the companies didn't really put a lot of effort into their mid-size line. It was all into the full size. And so the interior for a top, you know, ZR2 is like top trim, top tier Colorado, and the interior was just looked like some basic little vehicle. So very, very basic, limited interiors, especially for, you know, what we're getting nowadays. It does have remote start, does have heated seats, which is very important for the winter time. Remote start, very important. Heated seats and steering wheel, also very important, because when I do my winter camping and stuff, I'll be doing whatever, putting change on the vehicle, and my hands will be numb within seconds. But I can go inside and you can put your hands on the steering wheel and it's hot immediately. You don't have to wait for the engine to warm up or anything, so you can kind of get some relief. So just truck stuff in general, you know, remote start and heated steering wheel and seats, that's a big one, and it does have that, so that's kind of important. But just very basic, and that might be a good thing for some people, because, you know, the more fancy it is on the inside, the more fancy things are, the less likely people get into this mindset, well, I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want to ruin it, or I don't want to scratch the paint, or I don't want to damage it. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, this is a truck. The more damaged and rugged it looks, the better it looks, so you're okay. But a lot of people don't think that way, and so maybe the nicer the interior is, the less likely they're going to go use that truck for what it's meant for. So maybe for some people, having a more basic interior is a good thing, because it'll get them out and enjoy the truck more than worrying about whether or not they're getting their seats dirty or something, you know. I mean, it's not a sports car, so that's just my opinion. Rear shock mount. Okay, so the rear shock mount placement is terrible. Most people know about this, but you know, if you've, you know, this became a common issue, and a lot of aftermarket companies have made rear shock mount relocation brackets and stuff so that you can do that. But that's just a whole nother thing that you have to upgrade and either pay for, or, you know, do the work yourself that, you know, you really shouldn't have had to do in the first place. And I know that Chevy has fixed that on the newer Gen ZR2s, but it's definitely a negative. It makes it harder to rock crawl and make sure you're clearing things, because now instead of worrying about, you know, you got your tires, then you got your rear diff right here, and it used to have, so this would be your high spots in between the tire and the rear diff, but now you don't even have that anymore because you got these shock mounts coming in. So it's like a little minefield of stuff that you're worried about hitting right there. So that's just an issue when you're off-roading. All right, spare tire placement. So the spare tire placement's not ideal. It's low to the ground. It's going to end up, you know, catching on stuff. And I think I have some videos of me, you know, getting it caught where I literally can't get over the obstacle because the spare tire is like rubbing up against the rock. So, and you can only fit, I think you can fit a 33 under there, but you can't fit a 35. And yeah, so I have to put my 35-inch tire inside the bed. You know, and it takes up a ton of space. And the only other option is to either get a whole new bumper with a swing out. So my, you know, recommendation would be just make the truck with a bumper that has a swing out from the factory, just like Jeep does. I mean, that's all Jeeps have, their spare tire right there on the back, so that way you can fit, no matter how big it is, you can fit it on there, and they just set it up that way. So why not set the ZR2 up that way as well? Maybe you don't need to do it for your more basic trims, for people who are just buying you know, the truck to do utility stuff in town or whatever on their ranch. But if you're doing the ZR2 or Bison trims, they need to have the spare tire kind of, you know, somewhere. I know the new gens, they have the spare tire. The new gen ZR2 Bison has 35-inch tires, and they stick the tire up in the back of the truck, which is better. That's better for sure, and it helps reduce weight on the rear tires, because when you have a big spare tire in the back like that on a tailgate, it does put more weight on the rear tire, which makes the front tires lighter. So if you're going up an obstacle, your front tires will be lighter and they're going to have trouble getting traction. So moving that tire to the back of the cab is going to shift the weight up a little bit more to the front. So that's a little better for off-roading just in general. Yeah, and then the last one I think is, yeah, the 31-inch tires from factory. So we briefly touched this just a second ago, but it comes with 31-inch tires from the factory. I think they need to do 33s minimum, ideally 35s, and like I've said, they fixed that in their newer gens. But this gen, that's an issue. Yeah, 31 inches just isn't ideal, and 33 inches makes a huge difference. If you've ever gone out and wheeled with the 31-inch tires, and then gone and done that same trail with 33-inch tires, you'll notice a huge difference. And then the second you put 35s on, you're like, wow, this is so much better, so much better. You just don't have to worry about all the little rocks and stuff, you know. It's just a way better tire size for rock crawling, just overall. I think the Tacoma, so the same Tacoma came with like 30-inch tires, and it didn't even come with all-terrain tires. So the ZR2 came with at least all-terrain tires, while the Tacoma came with like street tires, and they only did that so that they could improve their gas mileage on their spec sheet for selling purposes. But I mean, and we all know that tires and, you know, how high the truck is lifted up in the front, so your front bumper. So if you have a more like front bumper that's off-road capable and it shows the tires and stuff, that's going to create a lot of drag, and it's going to ruin your gas mileage. And same thing with the big meaty tires. So the second you do all that stuff to the Tacoma, the gas mileage is going to be just as bad. So they just did that for marketing. So that's kind of a plus, that at least the Chevy just put on like a good set of tires to begin with. So at least you can go do stuff for now and then get new tires later. But if you're on the Tacoma, you basically need to get new tires right away. All right, so in conclusion, a truck on IFS is going to be not as capable at rock crawling as a Jeep with straight axles, but it's going to be literally better at everything else. So utility, home life, your commute, just overall handling, highway driving, literally better at everything else, just not extreme rock crawling. So it can still do all this truck stuff and provide all that utility, but it's also going to allow you to do 90% of the off-road trails in the country, and it's going to allow you to have a lot of fun. You're going to be able to see all the stuff that you want, all the crazy places, all the crazy cool campsites. You're going to be able to go see almost all of them. You're going to be able to do almost all the trails, and you're going to be able to do all the utility, all the chore stuff back home when you're in the city, when you're not out on vacation.
Still working?